All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything Else Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be doing our preview and prediction for the 2022 Gasparilla Bowl. But before we get into this one, Nick, we woke up to the news that Mike Leach is no longer with us. A month to the day of the tragic shooting in Charlottesville at the University of Virginia, we wake up to this news. Not much I can really say. We're all hurting. This is terrible news to wake up to, especially when Leach was only 61 years old. What are your thoughts on this as we try to wrap our head around the reality that one of the best sports personalities is no longer here?
I think it's certainly disappointing to hear the news. A great personality, a great coach, a revolutionary coach. I remember that year at Texas Tech with Michael Crabtree and Graham Harrell. That was an incredible year. I was just a kid, but I remember watching those games with my dad and how much fun that team was when they beat Texas, the number one team in the country at that point. And they put together that incredible season in what was a truly talented Big 12 South in 2008. Mike Leach is a fantastic personality. Some of those interviews he gave, especially with Alyssa Lang post-game, about marriage advice he gave her, about candy corn, this, that, and the other. One-of-a-kind personality, and I heard this a lot today on ESPN, SEC Network. In a sports world that is so dry, where coaches are worried about not saying things so they don't get canceled or don't lose their job. Mike Leach didn't care about being politically correct. He said what was on his mind, and he wanted to have fun with it. There was a segment on ESPN today talking about how he had a house in Key West, Florida. When he was a kid, he always wanted to live in Key West. He would go down there in the off season, and they had a bar. They had special seats for him saved at this bar. Just kind of the kind of guy you want to grab a drink with as a coach, and it's just really sad to see him go at 61 years old. And he was building something at the state. They had a great year this past season, and I really feel sorry for his whole family, and I hope that the whole community in Mississippi State can kind of mourn over this and get over this tragedy.
Praying for everyone in Starksville. Looking at this Gasparilla Bowl, Wake Forest 1-point favorites here over Missouri, Friday, December 23rd, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Raymond James Stadium's the site of this one. First meeting ever between these two schools. Looking at this Wake Forest offense, Sam Hartman's potentially a guy I expect maybe to enter the transfer portal, but this game gets closer and closer by the day, and he has yet to do so. Maybe he'll wait until afterwards to make a decision on his future. It also potentially includes the NFL. Pretty good season for Hartman. I think his ceiling just seems to be maxed out here with the Demon Deacons. 35 touchdowns, another great number, 3,400 yards, especially when, he was not able to go, in the preseason due to some medical issues, missed week one. Only played in 11 games, 11 more interceptions, though, Nick. His interception per game and his career ratio is just something awful. He's just turnover prone as they come. But you look at this backfield, they're down. It was a pretty deep backfield, but now they're down two guys, Quentin Cooley, Christian Turner, in the transfer. And it's going to be up to him. 643 yards and 5 touchdowns on the year. This is not the most of efficient rushing attacks because, they love to air it out with Hartman's arm and some of these talented pass catchers. A.T. Perry, also another guy we'll monitor. I expect him to play in this game, though. 70 receptions, 980 yards, 11 touchdowns. And then after that, they have 4 more guys that have 35-plus receptions. You got Donovan Green. Jamal Banks stepped up this year. He's second on the team with 8 touchdowns. Keyshawn Williams, Taylor Morin as well. All those guys have 35-plus grabs and 500-plus yards, Nick. What do you make of this offense that, despite having a bit of a turnover-prone quarterback, they seem to put up their numbers?
Certainly it's impressive that Sam Hartman was able to get back on the field after his health scare earlier in the year. I'm certainly proud and happy for him. The yards numbers, completion percentage, these are solid, almost 3,500 yards, 60% completion percentage, 35 touchdowns. The 11 interceptions is a terrible number. Obviously that's something that's always been an issue with Sam Hartman. That's been a known issue, that he is turnover prone. I like the way this offense works through the air. Of course, Ellison's not the worst back in the world, but 4.3 yards per carry plus the 5 scores is really just not fantastic numbers from A.T. Perry. He could potentially be drafted. I'm surprised he didn't sit out for this game. I thought he might have, considering he does have potential to be drafted potentially a year early. He is a really talented wide receiver, leading the team, 14 yards per grab, 11 touchdowns for him. Donovan Green, Jamal Banks. These guys are not terrible supporting cast. Keyshawn Williams as well. Taylor Morin. These guys all have above 500 yards receiving, which is really impressive when you think about, considering that's 5 wide receivers right there that have at least 500 yards receiving. And Blake Whiteheart, the tight end, has 287 yards receiving as well, and 3 scores for him. So they get the tight end involved a little bit. I like this pass catching core. It's a solid pass catching core. They do have fantastic numbers. They put up a lot of good numbers through the air. Will Sam Hartman play? We don't really know. It hasn't been confirmed yet. Of course, as we get closer to the contest, I would like to think that he is going to play. I'd love to see him play this year, considering his future's kind of up in the air. Does he transfer or not? I think Sam Hartman's a great quarterback, a great personality in college football. So I'd like to see him play one more time for the Demon Deacons.
Michael Kern is waiting in the wings. Backup quarterback Brett Griffiths, he is in the transfer portal himself. Pass protection on this offense, not great. Devontae Gordon, Mitchell Juergens up front. I think those guys have certainly been two impact contributors to this offensive line, but collectively it's not a great group. Looking at the Missouri offense, Brady Cook, he got to go in the bowl game last year when Connor Blaslick opted out, and he ended up putting up a resilient effort against Army, earned himself the job, and he's been, pretty respectable this year. 2,500 yards, complete 65% of his passes, 13 touchdowns, 7 picks, 547 rushing, and 6 scores. A good chunk of that came in the season finale against Arkansas as a game I picked them to win, and they were able to get the job done. Look at the backfield, the former walk-on and Cody Schrader, a guy we highlighted in the preseason, really came on this year, 690 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's earned himself a scholarship, of course. Nathaniel Pete, 400 yards for him. And then, of course, Cook is the second leading rusher. So this backfield's pretty deep, I would say. They got a handful of different guys who can tote the rock. Dominic Lovett, he's transferring. He's their leading pass catcher, leads them in almost every single category other than touchdowns, which belongs to Luther Burden, who's going to stay put, the former 5-star, 38 grabs, 329 yards, proved to be a very reliable underneath weapon for Cook this year. And then Barrett Bannister has been around a long time. He's going to be the guy that's going to be looking for his first touchdown of the year. None on the season. 37 receptions, 408 yards, though. And Tuskegee Dove, he's a senior, only 16 receptions on the year. But there's a handful of respectable guys in this receiving core. I think, next year, as long as everybody stays put, Burden, he already, announced he's going to be staying. Setting up for next year, this is going to be a great receiving core, I think, for Missouri. Top to bottom, I think this is an offense that's certainly more underrated than not, Nick. What is your take on this Missouri offense? 26 points per game, 370 yards, pretty modest numbers. This is a unit late in the year, though, especially against the Hogs, that really started to click.
This is a team that's 6-6. Their offense kind of shows that. They don't jump off the page at you, but they aren't bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's important that Luther Burden stays put in Columbia. Eli Drinkwitz landing him was a huge splash move for the coach that's, considered an offensive mind, previous offensive coordinator at NC State, had a good offense at App State. So Drinkwitz gets his guy to stay. Burden, commits to staying for another season. Fantastic wide receiver. I know the numbers weren't what some Mizzou fans hope, but he is a true freshman after all, and I think the numbers aren't bad with the 6 scores plus 329 yards receiving for him. Of course, losing Lovett's a big blow for this bowl game and for the future. Brady Cook came out, didn't have a bad season by any, it wasn't great, but wasn't terrible either. 2,500 yards receiving, plus 65% completion percentage, 13 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, average, which really what this Mizzou offense is average. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just average. They put up points, they score, they win games they need to, they don't score in games they're not supposed to. So this is an average offense for me. I think they do have some potential here to put something together as they got some experience, and they have Burden back, who could be a big play weapon ability at any point in this offense. I think Schrader as well is a good back. He can break off a big carry. I'm a little concerned about his yards per carry, 4.4, and also for Brady Cook, 4.4. A little disappointing in the production side of things, but this offense, like I said, average, but has potential to boom if necessary.
Looking at the Wake Forest defense, much of the same with the Demon Deacons, 29 points per game, allowed 410 yards, still not great against the pass, 117th in that category. And this is something I seem to say every single year. It's like a third year in a row I've said this going into the years. They have a lot of talent in their back end, but they just can't cover a horse, and I don't know why. And that's why I put who will play in the back end. Gavin Holmes has entered the portal, so we'll see if Kalen Carlson follows suit. Brendan Harris, a safety. Well, I don't know who's going to play in the back end. I don't expect them to play too well if they do. But this defensive line, Nick, I think is really good. You guys like Rondell Bothroyd, Kobe Turner. I mean, these guys have been phenomenal up front for them. Tyler Williams as well. This is a deep defensive front. That's another thing I talked about in the preseason was how good they were up front. Jasheen Davis leads the way with 6 sacks, 13 tackle for loss. Back to Kobe Turner, who's a phenomenal run stopper, and Bothroyd for the last 2 years has been great for them. Ryan Smenda, Chase Jones, some good, respectable linebackers in the middle. This is a defense, Nick, that I think at times they play good, but more often than not, they're playing pretty bad. You remember all the way back in that Clemson game, they really seemed to have the Tigers' number, and they started to fall apart against an offense they probably shouldn't have played that bad against. And then they turned around the next week and looked great against Florida State. So they've just been an inconsistent unit. I think from games like NC State where they're playing a backup and they lost that game because the defense was playing so good for the Wolfpack. And then you turn around and look at a Wake Forest defense. They got shredded against North Carolina. Weren't great against Syracuse, who's in a bit of a slump, and then they gave up 500-plus yards to do. This is just a unit that's all over the place. Their defensive line is really good, though. How do you think they match up here against the Tiger offense that themselves is a pretty inconsistent unit, even though they did play really good their last time out?
I think inconsistent is the best way to put it for this defense for Wake Forest. They're not great at anything, really. They're solid against the run, but they're terrible against the pass, which really has been a big Achilles heel for this defense. Ryan Smenda, I like him at linebacker. 106 total tackles, solid number for him. 3 pass breakups as well. He's leading the way. Chase Jones, another solid linebacker, 2 sacks for him, plus a 66 total tackles. Bothright, I like him. He's got the 5 sacks in the season, plus 27 total tackles. Kobe Turner as well, not bad on the defensive line at all. 34 total tackles, plus a sack for him. Deshaun Davis, 7 sacks on the season, 33 total tackles. So this is not a bad defense by any stretch of the imagination. I just think they underperform when they need to most. They make mistakes when they shouldn't be making mistakes. Guys get left wide open when they really need to be kind of locked down in tight game situations. So at the end of the Clemson game, the defense kind of just fell apart and let DJ Uiagalelei kind of pick them apart. So I don't really know what to expect out of this defense. It's kind of been a mixed bag all season, and that's really been a problem for them.
Now again, the Missouri defense, the unit's really improved compared to last year. An outlier here, though, Nick. They gave up 724 yards to Tennessee, almost 10 yards per play. That is just astronomical. But before that, they went 4 straight without allowing 300 yards. They allowed only 259 to Mexico State, and then 325 against Arkansas. So, they went a great stretch of the season here in the back half, not giving up much at all. Tennessee, though, they go to Neyland and get absolutely torched. And now, the biggest reason I picked them to beat Arkansas is because I felt like a lot of these veterans on this defense, guys like Tyrone Harper, Martez Manuel, Chris Abrams-Drainey, Isaiah McGuire, I really felt like they would step up in that game. They certainly did. Those guys all played collectively a very good game. Tyrone Hopper, 14 tackles for loss. The aforementioned McGuire, 13. DJ Coleman, another senior defensive leader up front, 10.5. And then Manuel from his defensive back position has 9.5. So they have 4 guys that really get into the backfield with ease. This is a pass rush with 33 sacks, led by McGuire with 7.5. Him and DJ Coleman have been phenomenal up front. I think this is a bit of a bad matchup for Wake Forest because they don't run the ball very efficiently to begin with. Now they have to face this stout defensive line. This is a run defense, Nick, that was absolutely horrible. Down to 127 yards per game allowed this season. Tremendous work on this side of the ball. What do you make of them in this game? Because they also have a great linebacker in Chad Bailey who's been great coverage for them. And, as long as none of these guys opt out. 2 good corners in Abrams-Drainey has 13 pass breakups. And Rackstraw, he has 12 of his own. I think this is a pretty good unit to match up here with Wake Forest, but they are facing probably a similar style of offense to Tennessee. Not really comparing them that much, but I think the philosophy and the weapons they have is certainly comparable to what they saw a couple weeks ago. So even though they've been great here for most of the second half of the year, they're playing an offense that's probably got them a little nervous considering the last time they played a similar style, they got absolutely burned.
I like the potential with this defense. They've really improved so far this season. I like how they get after the quarterback. The sack numbers are fantastic. McGuire, the 7 sacks in the season. Coleman, 5.5. Robinson, 3.5. Hopper, 3. These guys, Martez Manuel, 4 sacks from, secondary. 50 tackles in the season for him. Jalen Charles as well. He's got 72 total tackles plus a sack. He has 2 interceptions as well in the season. So I really like how this team has certainly improved against the run. The 127 yards per game is a fantastic number. I do like the matchup potential here. I think they can get after Sam Hartman and put some pressure on him if he's the quarterback under center. I think that is a big recipe for success. Can Mizzou's defense get pressure on the quarterback against Wake? That's going to be their key if they're going to win this bowl game for me. They got to put pressure on the quarterback early on, force him uncomfortable situations, flush him out of the pocket, that sort of thing. This defense has improved. I think they're continuing to improve under Eli Drinkwitz as a whole unit in Columbia. I think they're getting better. I like a lot of the experience here. These guys have had good seasons. They stepped up when they needed to. Yes, the Tennessee game is certainly an outlier. The 700 yards is bad, but that Tennessee offense is fantastic on the road in Neyland. So I'm going to give them I'll cut them a little bit of slack on that one. I like this defense. I like the way they've improved so far this season. I think there's a lot of potential going forward for this Mizzou defense.
Now we got the final thoughts and the prediction on this one. Keys to the game for Wake Forest. Who's playing? You already got 3 starters in the portal, backup quarterback as well. Is Hartman going to play? A.T. Perry. That's going to be something they got to sort out. Right now it seems hopeful. Must be strong on the interior because the run defense is obviously not the best of units for Wake Forest at times. And their secondaries, of course, not very good. I think for Missouri, don't give up big plays. Get that vertical ground game going. I think that's exactly what they'll do. I think they'll run for about 150, 175 yards as a team. I think they'll have a handful of big plays in the passing game. I like Brady Cook. This is a guy that loves to make plays, especially with his feet. So I think this will be a close game. I think Missouri 34-26. I certainly think maybe if there's blowout potential, it's going to be Wake getting potentially blown out. I think Missouri, they're going to be more amped up to play this game, especially some of those leaders on defense, like I alluded to a couple weeks ago against Arkansas. I don't know. I just think they're going to play with more energy on offense. Hartman, he played 11 games, had 11 interceptions. He's good for at least 1 or 2 turnovers. And obviously, the Louisville game, they had 8 turnovers. They got blown out. So, obviously, when they do that, that's not something they're going to do. So I say a turnover or 2. It's going to give Missouri the edge. Still picking a pretty conservative score, 34-26. I think it could be a lot more than that, though, in favor of the Tigers.
I also agree. I think Missouri's going to win this one. I went a little careful with my score. I think the defenses will make some good plays at points, but I think Hartman will have a few bad interceptions at some point or turnovers in general, and they'll find Wake behind the 8 ball. Of course, them missing a lot of starters is certainly hurting them, and I think that Missouri's defensive line has serious potential to get after Hartman and sack him a few times and make him uncomfortable, which I think is the big key for me here. Can Missouri get after the quarterback? If they can do that, they certainly should be able to win this bowl game. I like Missouri here. I think they have a lot of talent on offense. I think they have enough talent returning, even though Lovett is entering the portal and not playing, and I think there is some serious potential for this Missouri team to put up a lot of points here. I'm going to stay a little bit safe because I think that they're just still trying to figure things out on offense, considering they have to make up for the fact that Lovett's no longer there, but this is a good team. I think Missouri should win this bowl game.
That's me for today's episode, guys. Nate, thank you for joining me on this very difficult day.
Absolutely. College football community is certainly mourning a loss. We move forward to bowl season and try to look forward. I know that's something that Mike Leach would want for us to look forward, move on, get ready for the season, get ready for bowl season start, and be excited. I know he's smiling down on us from above there.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.